the reading for right now. My pleasure now to introduce our speaker. Lexi is coming to us from Canada. I am looking forward to hearing what God's going to say through her tonight. I know it's going to be good. Please help me welcome Lexi. Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you so much, everybody.
Recording in progress.
My name is Lexi, and I'm an alcoholic. Thanks for having me here tonight. I want to just start off by saying, so my sobriety date is March 27th, 2022. So just past 2 years sober. I have a home group. My home group is the Tuesday North group in London, Ontario, Canada. And we meet on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. So I think it's important to say that I do have a home group and that I'm an active member in my home group. I also have a sponsor and who I talk to on a regular basis, and I sponsor women as well in the program. And that has been really the biggest joy of my recovery so far, to watch other women recover from a seemingly hopeless state of mind and body. So I want to tell you tonight what I was like, what happened, and what I'm like today. So I grew up in, it was funny. So my dad actually spoke at this meeting a few weeks ago. So you might, if you were here a couple of weeks ago, you might notice some similarities to our story. But I grew up in an alcoholic home, even though there was no drinking in my home. I've never seen my dad drink. He got sober a few years before I was born, so I've never seen him drink, but he was definitely in untreated alcoholism. So for the majority of my early childhood, and that caused a lot of difficulties, especially between my dad and I. There was a lot of yelling and fighting in the house. Even though I was, loved and well taken care of, my dad and I just could not get along. I think I was born ready to fight him and ready to fight the world, really. So yeah, no drinking really in my house, but the alcoholic tendencies were there. I have an older sister and a younger brother, so I'm the middle child. So as I like to say, I'm the forgotten one. And life was good growing up. And I want to tell you about my childhood just a little bit, because it doesn't matter what happened to me when I was a kid, or what did or didn't happen or anything. None of that made me an alcoholic. It's just I thought you had to have a reason to be an alcoholic. So I thought, well, I had a good childhood. Yeah, my dad and I didn't get along very well, but I had no reason to be an alcoholic. And, I've come to learn through the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that that's not the case at all. I'm an alcoholic because I have a mental obsession and I have an allergy to alcohol. And that's just all there is to it. So I grew up in like I said, a loving home. My mom is, the sweetest lady ever. And my dad, I think he's a great man, but there was challenges there. And I had everything I wanted. I never went without. We lived in a, I would say upper middle class family. In an upper middle class neighborhood. I went to a good school. I got to do every extracurricular activity I ever wanted. If I wanted to do piano, I took piano lessons. If I wanted to play hockey, I played hockey. Anything I wanted to do or try, I got to do. And so I was very supported by my parents, and it was never enough, right? And so the selfishness and self-centered started for me for as long as I can remember, when I look back at it now, it was from the beginning. Nothing was ever good enough for me. I always wanted more, and everything was everybody else's fault. And I was never able to take accountability for my actions. And so I had everything I wanted. And then when I was a kid, I was, horribly bullied all through elementary school. And so I always struggled with my, interpersonal relationships with other people. I didn't really have very many friends. I wasn't very good in school. I had a learning disability. So in some areas I was extremely smart. I was very advanced in, English and kind of those sorts of classes, and then really, really behind in math and science. And I think that, I felt that egomaniac with an inferiority complex. I was great at some things and just terrible at others. And yeah, bullied horribly badly. And I blamed my parents for a long time for that, because I always thought there was something that they should have been doing more, right? And that's kind of the theme, is everybody else should have been doing more to help me. And I can look back at it now and see, okay, and thankfully with the help of a sponsor who told me when I was doing my 5th step with her, they could have taken me out of school and put me to another school and, blah, blah, blah. And finally she said, Lexi, they had 2 other kids to look after. Like, what were they supposed to drive you across the city when they're trying to get 2 other kids to school? And they went to the school like every other week trying to deal with this bullying, and, it wasn't good enough for you. Like, how selfish are you? And it's like, oh, and that was kind of a real, light bulb kind of a moment where it was, oh yeah, like they were doing the best they could at the time. And I always, I always knew growing up that my dad didn't drink, but I didn't know why. It was just normal. Dad doesn't drink. And that was, the end of the story. So it wasn't until I was about 12 or 13 that I found out the reason that my dad doesn't drink is because he's an alcoholic. So they sat us down, my parents, when I was about 12 or 13. And he said, the reason that dad doesn't drink is because I'm an alcoholic. And I was so upset. I didn't even really know what an alcoholic was, but I remember being so upset. And I've always been exactly like my dad. So I remember thinking so clearly at 12 years old when he said I'm an alcoholic, I thought, oh crap, I'm going to be an alcoholic too. Like, I just knew from the very beginning that I was going to be an alcoholic. So I was scared of alcohol for sure. At that point in life, my dad was so I remember going to, his 15th year birthday. And so that was my very first AA meeting that I remember, but I used to go to AA meetings when I was a baby and my, bassinet, and I'd get passed around the meetings, but obviously I don't remember those. But the first one I went to that I remember was my dad's 15-year birthday. And I remember thinking, like, going to that meeting and his home group is a men's meeting. And it was a lot of men, and they, when people introduced themselves and everybody said, hi, Bob. Like, I just thought it was the funniest thing in the world. And I just couldn't believe that people were actually, at these meetings. Like, I just didn't understand it, right? I just didn't get it. And, but I was scared of drinking for sure. And my dad was at that point where he was not in that place of neutrality that the book talks about, that when you've done the steps and you've had a spiritual awakening and you're recovered, you don't fear it. You're not cocky, but we're not afraid. So he was very strict about alcohol, that there would be no drinking. And of course, my sister was a goody two shoes, and she was the studious one, and she never really cared. She was more of a homebody, and I was the rule breaker. So, but fear of alcoholism did keep me from drinking until I was 16. And then the fear was not a sufficiently strong reason to keep me from drinking. It talks about in the book, there's the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. Well, if you're a moderate drinker, a sufficiently strong reason, ill health, falling in love, advice from a doctor will allow you to stop or moderate. That has never been me. I knew I was, I'm certainly a real alcoholic. So I get into high school, and okay, I know dad doesn't drink, and there's all these talks about don't drink. And so I'm scared of drinking. And then my parents send me and my sister to go to Ireland for a month to study abroad. When I was I guess it was 15. I was going into, I think, the 11th grade or something. And that was where I had my first drink. And because I remember thinking like, we went to Ireland and I was with a bunch of other girls and it was, so much fun. And so my first drink was, at a pub in Ireland and it was a Guinness. And I just thought like, I have arrived. Like I wanted to be with the cool kids and they were going out to drink. So I wanted to go out to drink. And that was like a real shift for me because before I would have been more with, the nerdy kids or the studious kids they stayed and did, schoolwork and the other kids went out to drink and party and carry on. And that's where I wanted to be. They looked like they were having so much fun. And, my first drink, it's so funny now because like I drank abnormally from the beginning. Like I remember taking that first drink so clearly, like it was yesterday, and just like it was that absolute light switch moment. I was off to the races. I took it too far. That first night, I made an absolute fool out of myself and woke up the next morning and thought, that was awesome. When can I do it again? And it carried on like that. And, how I drank is really, as much as it's, I want you to, I want to qualify so that you know that I am a real alcoholic. How I drank is really irrelevant because it doesn't matter how much you drink, right? But it's what happens to me when I drink. And I was 15, 16 years old. I go home. I can't get my hands on alcohol as easily, right? So there's older guys in school that'll buy me alcohol and buy me and my friends alcohol. And so that's what I do, right? I had an older boyfriend and they would get us alcohol and I'd sneak alcohol. And, so my dad doesn't drink and my mom is a poor drinker in that, she has one glass of wine and she like feels drunk and has to stop. And I've never related to that at all. So there was alcohol like in the house, right? So, but I would, sometimes steal her alcohol, but I was, scared. So it was really when I could get my hands on it, I would take every opportunity I got. And, so then I had this boyfriend and his parents let us drink, in their house. So, I didn't really, we dated for quite a number of years, but we probably should have broken up a long time sooner, but his parents let us drink in his house. So I wasn't going to break up with him. I was like, well, this is great. We can go drink in your house. And like, so this is in high school. And he would say to me, Lexi, every time you want to hang out, like every time you come over, you want to drink. Why do you always want to drink? Why don't you want to do anything else? And I just thought that was such an odd question because I thought, well, why don't you want to drink? Like your parents let us and it's fun. So why wouldn't we? And, at this point, the relationship with my dad is extremely, extremely strained. I hate him really for all intents and purposes. I hate him. I feel like he is ruining my life. He is extremely strict with me. And now I can look back and think, okay, he was being protective because he knew that I was definitely in the most danger out of the three kids. I was always the wild one. And, so I blamed my dad for a lot, oh, well, you ruined high school for me because I couldn't go out to do this or that because you didn't let me. And, I blamed him and I always thought, well, and then I had this perception in my head that he didn't love me, right? That he hated me too. And I thought always to myself, well, if dad loved me more and my mom loved me less, then I'd be perfect. Because my mom really tried to make up for, the conflict with dad with, overcompensating, I would say. And, so I always thought, well, if he loved me more and she loved me less, I would be perfect, right? Like externally, I need this external situation to change for me to be happy. And, it took me a long time to getting into the program that, to realize, okay, like they were doing, the best that they could. Is it possible, my dad is still a very successful businessman, owns his own business, is it possible that he was just doing the best he could with the tools that he had? Now I can understand the relationship he had with his family, why he might behave the way he does, that it doesn't have anything to do with me. Is it possible that he was so concerned about being the sole provider for our family that he was worried about keeping a roof over our head, food in our fridge, letting me do all the activities I wanted? And I'm upset with him because he couldn't come to every hockey game that I had, right? Like, I just am so focused on myself and what I want and what I think I need that I'm just incapable of thinking about other people. And it took me until Alcoholics Anonymous to realize that, like, I carried this anger and these resentments towards my parents for a long time. And so, I finished high school and I'm not really happy with what I'm doing. So I decide, I've got a cousin who lives across the country. So I move across the country to move in with him. And so where I live in Canada, the drinking age is 19. And the drinking age there where I moved to was 18. So I was like, it was not the reason I moved there, but it certainly didn't detract anything from me moving there. So I went, had a great time, drank too much, had a great time. And this started for me, what I now know is the, geographic cure, right? I wasn't happy where I was. I wasn't happy in the relationship I had. I wasn't happy with my parents. I didn't like living, where I was anymore. So I ran away. And that was just something that I continuously did, was just run away. So I was there, then I came back to London to go to college and took hotel management. So really it was just an excuse to get drunk all the time. We, were out every single night of the week. And I don't think my drinking is abnormal at this point because I'm surrounding myself with people who drink like me. And I have a bunch of different groups of friends who they'll go out with me Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, like different groups of people for really, 2 or 3 different nights of the week. So I can drink every night if I want to. And by this point, I have started drinking by myself in my room at my parents' house. And I'm starting to get caught drinking by myself in my room. So when I was about 19, my dad saw some empty cans and bottles in my room and called me out on it. I like to say he hadn't got to the chapter yet where it says we do not, call anybody else an alcoholic. But he said to me, Lexi, you're drinking like an alcoholic. Alcoholics drink in their room by themselves. And that was true for me. I know it's not true for everybody, but that was certainly true for me. And of course, I can give you one guess on how that went when he told me, oh, you're drinking like an alcoholic. That was probably the biggest fight we have ever gotten in. And I, said, how, and I'm defensive because I already know deep down in my soul that there's an issue with my drinking, but I certainly am not ready to do anything about it. So, how dare you? Don't you ever talk to me about that? Like, just absolute losing. It was just the worst fight. And, to his credit, he never brought up my drinking again, ever. And I'm so glad that he did that because, if he had kept bringing it up, it probably would have pushed me away longer. And I think, he thankfully had a strong sponsor who told him, like, when she's ready, she'll find the rooms. Like, she knows where to go. But I'm still angry with him, and I'm still, he's still the problem and the cause of all my issues in life. And, I move out west again after I graduate college, and I moved to this little resort town in the Rocky Mountains and drink and party and have a great time. And, I noticed my drinking is not like everybody else's. Like, everybody else can keep those cute little bar carts stocked liquor in their kitchens, and I can't keep liquor in my house. Like if it's in my house, I'm gonna drink it. I will drink until I physically can't anymore, until it's all gone or I'm out of money. But being out of money never really stopped me because I would just steal it. So that never really, mattered to me. But if I could still put alcohol in my body and I still had some, I was drinking it. And people would make comments like, oh, like kind of joking, like we'd all joke, but oh, we're alcoholics. And I would say, oh, don't make jokes about being an alcoholic. Like my dad's an alcoholic, and that's not funny. And so I thought I was so righteous, right? And so like, I'm better than you. And so, fast forward, a couple of years, and COVID happens, right? So I'm working in the hospitality industry, and my job is opening and closing, where I'm getting laid off and then I'm being brought back because of all the restrictions. And so I'm back and forth between home and back to my parents' house and then back out to Alberta. And, I'm blaming that, I'm saying, oh, my mental health is deteriorating and it's because of this, right? But I am drinking every single day. I'm sneaking alcohol into my parents' house. I had this big black purse that I could just fit so much alcohol in. And I would, of course, only buy plastic bottles so that the glass bottles didn't clink together. And I'm trying to control the drinking, right? I've changed from, okay, I'm not going to drink rum anymore. I'm going to drink vodka. I'm going to drink coolers, but then the coolers aren't strong enough. So I'm putting vodka in the coolers to make them stronger. I'm only drinking on the weekend, and at one point my birthday's at the end of November. So I was not going to drink for the whole month leading up to my birthday, so that I could get really drunk on my birthday. And, I drank so much tonic water that I got physically ill. And I still don't think that I have a problem with alcohol. Like normal people are not drinking so much tonic water because they're trying to not drink that they're getting sick, right? But I don't see the insanity in my actions yet. I just think everything else is the problem and drinking is what's making me feel okay. And I'm not even really, willing to admit it at this point. And I would get in my car and I would say I would pray to a God that I didn't think I believed in. And I would say, please please help me not go to the liquor store. I do not want to go to the liquor store. And I would end up at the liquor store. And I didn't understand it. I couldn't wrap my head around it. I don't want to go to the liquor store. Or I'd wake up in the morning and I would say, I am not going to drink today. I'm not. And then by 10 a.m., I think I've changed my mind. I thought I had weak willpower, right? And it's not that I changed my mind. It's that the mental obsession took over. It drove me straight to the liquor store, and I didn't know that. I just thought, I don't have any willpower. And, or I would have any excuse to drink, my favorite would be I stubbed my toe today. I must go get a drink, to make me feel better. And so now, I've been back and forth. I finally decide, okay, you know what? I'm going to come home for good. So I find a job here in London, which funny enough is actually the same job that my dad worked at when he got sober at the same company. And so, he helped me get a job back in London so that I could move home. But of course, he's still never done anything for me, right? I still, he's helped me with all this stuff, but he's never done anything for me. And at this point too, so this was about 5 or 6 years before I got sober. My dad had our family calls it, his AA renaissance. He had a real reawakening into the AA program. And that's where I didn't know this is what happened. I noticed our relationship had changed. It had gone from, we never talked to each other. I kind of avoided him like the plague when I went home. I didn't want to talk to him. I had nothing to say to him. I didn't like him. To our relationship started to change. He started calling me, every Sunday night. He would call me. We had a standing date. He'd call me every Sunday and talk to me about my week and what had been going on with me. He started coming out west to visit me. Normally it would just be my mom that came out to visit me, and he started coming to visit. And of course, I thought that our relationship was getting better because I was getting older and more mature. It was all about me, and I hadn't done anything, but our relationship was getting better. Now I know it's because he had had this reawakening into AA. He'd gone through the steps again. He had started vigorously working the steps with other alcoholics. He started carrying the message. He immersed himself in AA. So he helps me, get a job back in Ontario, and my parents let me move back in with them. And I start working at this job, and I work from home. And I'm really trying to control my drinking now. I could work overtime. So I would work from, 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. so that I would try to time it so that the liquor store wouldn't be open. I couldn't physically go get any alcohol because the liquor store would be closed. But then they started selling wine and beer in grocery stores here. So then my plan went out the door because I would say, oh, I'm not going to go drink. And now the liquor store's closed. Oh, but I can go get wine from the grocery store now. So that, didn't work. So I'd go get, 6 bottles of wine. And my mental health is just terrible. I am terrible to be around. I am just a miserable person. I'm crying all the time. I'm mean to everybody, and I don't know why. And I just think, I have mental health issues, and everybody does right now because COVID. But it's different than everybody. It didn't affect my siblings like it did me, right? Like I was just going downhill and fast. So my parents and my sister had an intervention, if you will, on me. And they said, we don't know what's wrong with you, but you need help and you need to get help now. So, I had an employee assistance program at my work, and they made me call it. And it took quite a while for me to call it. And, they kept asking me, have you called? Have you called? Have you called? And I would say, no, I can't find the phone number. And I don't know, it's really hard to find, and like all these excuses, right? And so finally they just went and found the number for me and made me call. So I got, 3 free therapy sessions with somebody, and I go and we're doing the intake, and she asked me about, alcohol. And I said, I don't want to talk about alcohol. And she was like, because she was a good therapist, she said, okay, so we're going to talk about alcohol. So I never went back to see her, right? I was like, well, that's done. And then, my last drink was not spectacular in any way. There was nothing big that happened. Just, I was watching a movie with my sister, like we always did on Saturday nights. We were both drinking. She's not an alcoholic. She has 2 glasses of wine and stops. And I drank so much that I don't remember the end of the movie. And there was a bit of a tiff, and my dad texted me and he said, come downstairs and talk to your old man. So I did. And I had been sitting, I remember just for weeks before leading up to this, I'd been sitting on my hands at night because I was so scared that I just wanted to die, right? And I could just picture myself, I was just convinced that I was going to go downstairs and just kill myself because I hated everything about myself. And I would sit in my room at night and I would practice saying I'm an alcoholic. And I would just, but I wasn't ready to admit it out loud. And for some reason that night, it just came out. It was my time. It was God finally told me, Lexi, you have had enough. And I said to my dad, Dad, I'm an alcoholic and I can't stop drinking. And he said, I know. And I was so mad at him. Oh my God, I was so mad. I was shocked that he knew, right? I thought he was going to be like, oh, Lexi, you're an alcoholic. I had no idea. But he knew, and everybody knew. I didn't know. I think I was the last to know that I was an alcoholic, okay? So thank God he had this reemergence into AA, this renaissance. that he had done 12-step calls. He knew the program, and he knew where to take somebody when they're sick. And he took me to page 44, and it's like I sobered up instantly. Like he, and I'm sure you all know what I'm going to say, but he took me to page 44, and he said, Lexi, when you honestly want to, do you find you cannot quit? And I was like, yeah, like I can't quit even when I want to. And he said, okay. And when drinking, do you have little control over the amount you take? And I was like, yeah, I have no control. Once I start drinking, I have no control over the amount I take. He said, okay, well, you're probably an alcoholic. And that was just the most devastating news I had ever heard. And I thought, because I had spent my whole life not wanting to be like my dad. So to finally admit that I was like my dad was just like the most, just such defeat. Like I was like, take me now, God, like put me in the ground. I am like my dad. I cannot stand this. But I didn't know how freeing that night was, And he said, well, can you just not drink? Can you not drink for the rest of tonight? Well, first he said, yeah, you're probably an alcoholic. And I was, and then he says, the good news is there's a solution. And I was like, oh, okay. I don't know. I don't know anything about AA at this point, right? And he says, could you not drink for the rest of tonight? And I said, yeah, I cannot drink for the rest of tonight because I'd already drank everything that I had, but I could just not drink for the rest of tonight. So we get up the next day and I'm like, oh, what have I done, right? So he takes me to a meeting and and the meeting had moved. So we were in the wrong location, right? We're like a block away from where we were supposed to be. And he is like running me up and down these stairs, like we're looking for this meeting. And like, you remember your first day when you're sober, you're like sick and you're sweaty and it's just like, you just want to die. You're like, this is not my finest moment. I do not want to be looking for an AA meeting, right? And he is like running all over this building with his big book in his hand, basically shouting to everybody in the whole world, do you know where the AA meeting is? And I'm like waiting for the ground to just swallow me up, okay? Like I was like, this is the worst day of my life. So we can't find it. So he goes, so I said, this is a sign. I'm not meant to be here. Let's go home. And he was like, not so fast. And he had a backup. So we go to this meeting and it's a speaker meeting. And it's all these like old men, which is exactly what I thought AA was going to be like. I thought I'm too young to go to AA. It's all old men. And a speaker got up and shared his story. And I couldn't believe that he shared his story with no shame, no, embarrassment. He just got up and talked about how he drank and what he was like today. And for me in that meeting, the shame, guilt, and remorse left. Like when he got up there and shared his story, it was gone for me. I just thought, oh, I'm in the right spot. And I took to AA like a duck to water. Like I was all into AA from the very beginning. And, I remember at that meeting, they were giving out, they do a raffle for a big book. So, you buy your tickets and then if you win, you get the big book. And we didn't win. We bought our raffle tickets. We didn't win, but they came over. The guy who won the book came over and gave it to me anyways. And I was like, whoa, how did he know I needed a big book, right? And I was like, now I know, like, you can tell a newcomer, like, because I was like the worst looking person in the room. But I said to my dad after, oh my God, how did he know I needed a big book? And he was like, you'll learn. And then he did what I think the hardest thing that a parent in AA, I don't have kids, but I think he did what was probably the hardest thing a parent in AA could do is turn me over to the women in AA and say, please help her, like, please help my daughter. And it always gets me choked up because he, it's gotta be the hardest thing. Like he had seen me in pain for so long and he knew he couldn't help me. He just had to let me go. And he turned me over to the women and they were so strong and they, one took me to a meeting that night and they checked in on me and pushed me and said, they would say, call me. And I would say, I don't call people and I don't text and and they said, well, try it, and made sure I got to, meetings and helped me find my way. And so then my dad's sponsor was doing a back to basics workshop. And if you're not familiar with back to basics, it's a way to go through the steps in 4 1-hour sessions, designed for, how beginners meetings, I guess, used to be back in the day. And so he was doing back to basics. So I went through and did back to basics. Well, 3 out of the 4 people that did back to basics are still sober 2.5 years later. So, the odds are pretty good that if you do the steps quickly and get the big stuff out of the way, like, you can recover, quickly. Like, why would I want to prolong the period that I'm in pain by not doing the steps? Like, you're telling me that if I do the steps quickly, I'm not going to be in pain anymore. Why do I want to wait to do that? I was like, take this away. I cannot be in this pain anymore, because I'm going to kill somebody else, or I'm going to kill myself. So take this pain from me. And, I got told, get yourself down to the Tuesday North and find yourself a sponsor. And I did. And I went down to Tuesday North, and I, there was this lady, I wanted her to sponsor me. So I finally plucked up the courage and asked her, hey, will you sponsor me? And and I thought she would say, oh, Lexi, I've been, waiting for you to ask me to sponsor you because you're so amazing. And she said, Lexi, I thank you so much, but I'm actually too busy, but I'll help you find a sponsor. And I had done a 4th step, but I hadn't done my 5th step yet. So I said, well, I have this 4th step, so I think I'm supposed to share it with somebody. And she was like, okay, well, we'll do your 5th, and then we'll find you a permanent sponsor. So we did, and I got through my 5th, and then she got me connected with another woman who is amazing, who is still my sponsor today. And she is just big book focused, right? Like, she is like, and she taught me, not just by her words, but by her actions, how to be a good woman in Alcoholics Anonymous, and just how to be a good woman, like, and how to be strong and helpful to other people. And everything that she told me to do, she backed up by doing herself, right? And we read the book from the beginning to page 164, and every time it told us to read or to write, we wrote something. If it told us to pray, we prayed. If it asked us to write something, or to, if it says we asked God, we asked God. I did every single direction as outlined in the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous. And it changed my life, and I don't know when it changed my life, but it just, I never thought there would be a day that I could not think about alcohol, that I wouldn't be craving alcohol, that I wouldn't be fighting it. I thought, well, I can't live with it and I can't live without it. So I guess I'm just going to have to, like, that white knuckle. Oh, I'm not going to drink today. When I got sober, I remember, like, I was a couple of weeks sober. My parents went away for the weekend, and I was so scared that they were going away for the weekend. I was like, I can't be by myself because I could drink. I didn't. I went to meetings, called people, and it was fine. And, this past weekend, I moved out of my parents' house into my own home. And that's not even been a thought in my mind of, oh, I'm scared to be by myself. Like, the drinking problem has absolutely been removed from my life. Today, I have a thinking problem, and I have a problem with Lexi, but I do not have a drinking problem anymore. Like, and I'm not cocky, but I'm not afraid. And I can be by myself and know that I'm happy and I'm safe and I'm useful to the people around me. And so, and I just got in, and my sponsor was really on me from the beginning. Get involved in service, get a service commitment, like, start doing stuff. So I did, I started going to our district meetings, and I was the alternate GSR, and then I was the business meeting chair of my group. And, I would put the coffee on, and I would make, I set up the chairs, and I would do, like, and I just was like, anytime there was something to be done, I did it. Like, and I was like the first person to put my hand up, because they told me, if you do this, you won't drink. So I said, okay. And life carried on, and life was getting better. And I was, when I was 3 months sober, I left the job that I was at and started working for my dad. So I was living with my dad, working with my dad, and going to AA with my dad. And this is, a man that I couldn't stand 6 months before that, that I hated with my whole being. and we're doing all this stuff together, and we're happy and we're laughing. And AA allows me to show up for my family in ways that I always wanted to, but was never able to, Like, my mom owns a business. So my brother would call me, when I was drinking on a Friday night and say, at 7 p.m. or 8 and say, hey, can I get a ride, somewhere? And I would say, oh, no, sorry. Like, I've had one drink, but I'd really be so drunk. But I'd say, you got to call me before, 6 o'clock if you need a ride, because otherwise I'm going to have had a drink and I can't drive you. So, and then, about 6 or 7 months ago, it's 9 o'clock on a Friday night, and my parents are away for the weekend, and my mom owns a business, a store, and I get a call from them, and they say, hey, can you go to the store? The alarm's going off. And I was able to go to their store and deal with what was going on there. Somebody had thrown a rock through the window, and I was able to be there, help, clean up. I was able to be useful to the police. Like, I could, get them in the building, and, they had cash in the store that I didn't even take. Like, I was just helpful to my parents, and I'm helpful to my siblings, and I'm helpful to the people around me. Like, that's how AA has allowed me to show up for the people that I love and care about the most. And it has given me people that show up in my life too, right? So I told you I just moved out of my parents' house. On Saturday morning at 8:30 in the morning, like 11 people from AA showed up at my house and helped me move. And they brought trailers, and like, I had 3 trailers and a bunch of guys with power tools, and they moved me into my new house in like 2 hours. And 2 years ago, I didn't have one person that would come to help me. I didn't have any friends. I didn't have anybody that would be willing to help me, because I was so difficult to be around, and I wanted that connection with people, but I didn't know how to have it. And it's completely different today. And I'm a crier, by the way, so sorry. I should have told you that from the beginning. But, so AA has allowed me to show up, but I have gotten so much more in return, and people help me. And I've just finally learned that things are not about me anymore. Everything was always about me. Like, it was like a drum beating in my head. What about me? What about me? What about me? And if I'm not spiritually fit, if I'm not, living in 10, 11, and 12, if I'm, slacking on my daily disciplines, that comes back, and it starts quiet, right? And it gets louder and louder and louder until I go insane, and I'm like, what about me though? And I finally learned it's not about me anymore. Like, if when all else fails, intense work with another alcoholic saves the day. And I can, there's things I can do, right? Like, I can go pick people up and drive them to meetings. And it's always the person, and I always say, like, if somebody asks me for a ride home, if I can, I'm going to, right? And it's always the person that lives 25 or 30 minutes in the opposite direction from your house that needs like a ride home after the meeting. It's always the most inconvenient spot, but I'm willing to do it, right? And I'm happy to do it. And those people often end up, I often have the most meaningful conversations with. And when I'm open to how I can help other people, and when I'm open to God's will and not trying to control the show myself, I'm not trying to fit like a square peg into a round hole. Like, life is easier, and it's fun, and it's good to, like, I don't have to manage, like, things just happen, and I work hard, but I don't have to plan. I'm not saying, oh, if this doesn't happen, then I'm not worthy as a human being, or I can just move on, and I don't have to care so much about what other people think about me. I don't care about what people think about me pretty much ever today. And that used to like consume me of, oh, are they going to like me or not? Like, no, I am so secure with who I am as a person today, because I know my intentions are good. I can look at myself in a mirror and be happy with who I see, because I know that I have tried my best, and how other people view me is now not my problem. And that's freedom, right? Like, I am free today because I did the steps. I'm active in AA, like I did the steps quickly, and thankfully I had a sponsor who, you know, made me go work with other alcoholics. I was like 5 months sober when I started sponsoring women, and I didn't know what the heck I was doing, but we just kind of bungled along together and tried to figure it out. And I just ask for help in the morning and guidance, and I thank God at night, and, you know, do my evening review and try to be helpful. And like life always just has so far seemed to work out for me. And, you know, I've definitely not gotten everything I wanted, but if I got everything I wanted, then I don't know, it probably wouldn't be good. It wouldn't be good if I got everything I wanted, because what I want is usually not what I need, right? They're very, very different things. But when I can look back on things, I see, okay, yeah, I didn't get what I want, but I got exactly what I needed, and it worked out usually better than what I wanted in the first place. And yeah, I'm so, so grateful for Alcoholics Anonymous, and I'm so grateful for the people I've met, and, you know, for the way of life, because I'm not in constant collision anymore. You know, in step 2, it says will be, you know, could restore us to sanity, right? Like I have been restored to sanity. I don't drink every day, for one, but 2, it's like I see the truth in my actions today, my thoughts too, because my thoughts are often wrong. My perception is wrong. I have a disease of perception, So I've been returned to sanity, and and when I'm not sane, when I've been resting on my laurels and that voice creeps back in, I have people around me who are sane, who will tell me, hey, Lexi, like you're out of line. You need to, you know, look at this a little bit deeper. And I do, and I trust them, right? So I don't always have to agree with them, but I trust them. And it's made the world of difference. Like I say, you know, I'm a free woman today. I can go anywhere or do anything as long as, you know, I'm open and willing to being helpful. And it's been such an amazing last 2 years. And so I thank you all so much for allowing me the time to share my story with you. And that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Thanks.